Evolution teaches, Don, that life was different in the past. For example, this picture here from a museum shows life during the time of the dinosaurs. There's strange reptiles, strange birds, but you see nothing modern. You don't see a modern bird, a modern mammal, and it just appears that life was different in the past. Evolution also teaches that animals changed over time. Now, according to the theory of evolution, a bacteria, single-cell microscopic bacteria, slowly changed into human beings. The theory of evolution would also say that animals such as a dinosaur would slowly change into a hummingbird. The theory also would say that a hippopotamus or a hippopotamus-like animal changed into a whale. And the theory would also say that a fish changed into a salamander. That is the core belief of evolution. Now, the theory of creation is opposite of that. Creation teaches that life was the same in the past, that everything was created at once. All the animals and plants that have ever lived, all the types, were all created at once, and they did not change. So according to the theory of creation, if you look back in time, you would see modern plants and modern animals at any of the layers of time. Now, there was a second corollary for the theory of evolution, and that is about these rock layers. The theory of evolution would say that these rock layers were laid down over millions and billions of years. The theory of creation says something completely opposite. The theory of creation says that these rock layers were laid down in a single flood event.
So these are two very different, diametrically opposed views.
Yes, they are, and because they are so different about the rocks and about the animals, I was able to amalgamate these two ideas and say, I should be able to make a simple test to test evolution, and that's what I did. I used the animals changed and these rock layers and to design an experiment. So my prediction was that if creation was true, I should be able to go to the dinosaur dig sites, such as this one at Myget Moor, and find modern animals next to the dinosaurs if creation was true. And if evolution is true, I shouldn't find any or very few modern animals next to the dinosaurs.
So that's your test for evolution.
Yep.
If you find modern animals and plants together with dinosaurs, then it's creation. If the animals and plants that you find in the fossil record around the dinosaurs are diametrically different than what we have today, then evolution would be true.
That's right.
Okay.
And so
Makes sense.
It makes sense, and it was a simple test. So we went to the dinosaur dig sites, and then we went to the museums, and we photographed tens of thousands of fossils that were found in dinosaur rock layers or the dinosaur dig sites. And we proceeded on this test for the theory of evolution called living fossils.
Now, you've been at 10 dinosaur dig sites and 60 museums. You really did a lot of work.
We did a ton of work. We worked and we filmed year after year after year. We went all over the world. We went to, I think, 8 countries and traveled 160,000 miles. It was just a lot of work.
So here's the big question. This is what we really need to look at. Did you find any modern species of animals or plants buried alongside the dinosaurs?
Don, I found modern animals and modern plants next to the dinosaurs, and I didn't find just one or two, but I found representatives from all of the animal phyla living today in the dinosaur layers, and they looked the same, except they were all renamed.
Now, this is the crux of the issue, at least for our discussion today. You found animals that look just like the fossil, like they would be of the fossils we have of modern animals today, but the names are totally different. Talk about that.
Well, this is why I believe scientists have missed this whole thing. They have renamed fossils. So if you're reading an article about this fossil, you would have no idea that it looked just like a modern shellfish or just like a modern possum or whatever. And so by renaming animals and plants in the fossilized form, you basically can create evolution by changing the names. So it's the same animal, but you change the genus and species name, all of a sudden you have one genus going to the modern genus, and voila, evolution. But once you look at the example of the fossil, the name, the modern animal, the name, you realize there's something wrong here.
Can you give us an example of that?
Yes. One good example would be the nautilus. And it's a beautiful fossil. I think everyone would recognize the color of that shell and recognize that it's a nautilus. Within a nautilus, there are these septae that separate the chambers of the nautilus. It's in these chambers that the nautilus changes the pressure and is able to adjust its buoyancy by going up and down. Now, the animal doesn't live here. This is just pressure chambers. He lives out here. Now, to connect and to adjust the buoyancy, there is a tube that runs right here. I don't know if you can see this on the screen,
yes, sir,
where that tube sits. It's called the siphuncle, and it goes all the way around. And that's a soft tissue tube that adjusts pressure in the animal. Now, besides the siphuncle, there is this major area here, and this is where the animal lives. This is the body chamber of the animal. The animal doesn't live here. It lives out here. In the body chamber is the heart of the animal, the eyes, the gills, the kidneys. The tentacles come out here. The reproductive organs are here. The mouth, the intestines are here. All of these organs are in that one section. Now I want to show you a fossil from the California Academy of Sciences. When I saw this fossil on display, I said, wow, that sure looks like a nautilus. And it really made me step back. But the part that was so intriguing to me was the genus and species. Instead of being Nautilus pompilius, which is in modern nautilus, it was Cymatoceras texanum. And I thought to myself, you know what? That's a different genus and species. But maybe I just can't see why they named it a different genus and species, but it sure does look like a nautilus. I attributed it to my ignorance. I thought, you know, I can't see the inside of that shell. Maybe it's because there's something inside that I simply can't see. I gave it a pass. Then I went to Melbourne Museum, and Debbie took this photograph, and I had my jaw dropped. First of all, I want to point out, does anybody see anything missing here on this picture? We have the things that are there from the modern nautilus is the septae. I don't know if you can see those here on the fossil, just like the modern. And then because it was a fossil and it had the soft tissue preserved, here's the siphuncle. Can you see that running along here?
There's the tube, yeah.
Is that beautiful?
Uh-huh.
And if you'll notice, the spiral is here just like a modern nautilus, but there's something missing on this fossil that has to be missing. And when I saw this, I was like, where's the body chamber?
Right.
And I said, you know, if this animal lived, its body is out here, but there's no shell. And I thought about it for a while, and I realized, you know what, I think that fossil is broken. Because here is a modern nautilus, cut in half, the modern, okay? If you'll notice the septae, they act like supporting struts. This is the most firm part of the shell. You can't break this part of the shell very easy. Strut, 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 strut. But if you ever hold one of these half shells in your hand, you realize, boy, this is fragile. This could break off if I'm not careful. In fact, I always set them back into my fossil cabinet very gently because I'm always afraid of this body chamber broken off. So then I realized, you know, the fossil in Melbourne probably is a nautilus, but it's just lost its body chamber. I mean, it's the only logical conclusion you could make.
Would they agree with you on that?
Oh, I can't. I mean, you'd have to come up with another answer. Where does the body live?
It looks so obvious.
Yeah,
yes.
it's obvious.
It's irrefutable.
So, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but it's irrefutable in my mind. But here is the interesting thing. This is what I call the naming game. The modern nautilus is called Nautilus pompilius. Don, if you found this fossil, what would you call it?
That's what I would call it.
You'd still, I mean, if I found it, I would call it Nautilus pompilius.
Absolutely. It's the same.
And the scientists would say, no, the Nautilus pompilius did not live during the time of the dinosaurs, even though this was found with the dinosaur. This is not Nautilus pompilius. This is Cenoceras lineatus. Whoa. You mean you not only changed the species name from Pompilius to Lineatus, you're implying, the scientists, that this is so different that you have to put it in a whole another genus?
Yeah.
And this is when I began to lose faith in the naming system of these plants and animals because, to be quite frank, I would have called these the same animal. And part of me calling it the same animal is just my understanding of what life is like today. You see, in nature, there are great variations within one species. Like,
Sure.
for example, you and I, we're both Homo sapiens, but I might have 12 ribs, sets of ribs, you might have 13, I might have 5 lumbar vertebrae, you might have 6, but it doesn't matter. These small variations don't make us different species and certainly don't put us in a different genus category. But they made this on a small bump or some whatever they saw, that there's some slight variation that they could call this a different genus. I want to show you this variation in nature. I went down to my wife's home state, Louisiana, and got some oysters. Now, both of these oysters are out of the Gulf of Mexico, and I had an oyster specialist from Louisiana State Wildlife Agency identify the species. He said these two oysters are both American oysters from the Gulf of Mexico, and they're both Crassotria virginica, the same species. But look how different these things are.
Sure.
This is amazing. This oyster has this huge flare out here, okay? Mm-hmm. This oyster seems to be straight down here.
Yeah.
This oyster is big, broad at the bottom. This oyster is more narrow, and, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And actually, I had 6 oysters, and they all look different. And yet, the scientists say, no, just because they vary just a slight bit doesn't matter, doesn't mean that you should change their species name. They're the same animal. Well, if that's true in life, how in the world could these animals not be assigned to the same species, but also not be assigned the same genus? Wow. Well, we have a whole book of these where they change the genus and species name, and a whole video of these where you're looking at the live animal swimming and then the fossil, and they looked exactly the same. I'd like to show you a video clip from our video, Living Fossils. And this time, I want you to pay attention to the genus and species name they assign to the fossils. This is very interesting.
The Great Barrier Reef, located several miles off the coast of northeastern Australia, is the world's largest reef system, stretching over 1,000 miles, and is known for its corals and sponges. Dr. Werner dove here, looking for a match to a fossil coral he had seen at the Carnegie Museum. Before reaching his destination, this particular dive produced a treat. Dr. Werner was greeted by a giant 4-foot humphead Maori wrasse, who surprisingly performed a dance with this reef explorer. After this exhilarating encounter, his search continued for a modern coral to match this fossil exhibited at the Carnegie Museum. He eventually was successful. Although the fossil, with its round shape and mouth-like slit opening, was broken, the similarities between the living mushroom coral and the fossil were remarkable. But again, the dinosaur-era fossil was given a different genus and species name. Did modern types of fish coexist with dinosaurs, plesiosaurs, and mosasaurs? Paleontologists at the New Mexico Museum of Natural History and Science found this fossil shark tooth in a dinosaur rock layer. The similarities between this tooth and a modern goblin shark are undeniable. Dr. Werner questioned why this fossil was given a completely different genus name. Dr. Werner found many more examples of modern fish found with dinosaurs. This modern coelacanth looks a lot like this fossil at the Harvard Museum, but once again, the fossil was assigned to a completely different genus and species. Angel sharks live in the oceans today. This fossil angel shark was found with a dinosaur in Germany. Port Jackson sharks reside in the South Pacific. This fossil shark on display at the Carnegie Museum was found in a dinosaur lair. Guitarfish live off the coast of California. This fossil guitarfish was found with a dinosaur, Compsognathus. Herring live in the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. This fossil herring was found in a Cretaceous layer in Lebanon. Along with this fossil eel. This bowfin on display at the Milwaukee Public Museum was found near a T-Rex at Hell Creek, Montana. When compared to the living bowfin, they look similar, except for the colors and skin pattern added by the artist. Flounder have been found in dinosaur rock layers, but these and other common fish are rarely exhibited in museums.
Sturgeon and paddlefish and alligator gar are forms that have been found in association with dinosaurs.
But certainly the stingrays went through unaffected, the chimerids, many of the bony fishes, things like the salmon, the salmoniforms, they've gone through unaffected, and today they give us a bounty of some of the best food we can eat.
Scientists have also found fossils of modern jawless fish, such as lamprey and hagfish. And according to evolution experts, they look almost unchanged from the modern forms. Again, these fossils are rarely, if ever, displayed.
So those are interesting examples, but are those the only examples you have?
No, we found examples from not only the animals, but also the plants. You know, there's 7 modern plant divisions today, like the flowering plants and the conifers and the ginkgos and the mosses. Not only did we find examples from every invertebrate phyla, all the vertebrate major groups, but we found examples from all of the plant groups that are alive today. Have you ever heard of sequoias being with dinosaurs?
No.
I mean, just oak trees with dinosaurs, sassafras trees. You certainly don't see this at the museums. You don't see the museums display these modern animals.
So modern plants and modern animals are there in the strata with the dinosaurs.
Yep. It's amazing to imagine that a boa constrictor lived with T-Rex, a box turtle that looks exactly like a modern box turtle, a sequoia tree, and my mind can't pull them up. There's hundreds of examples that we put in our book and video series.
안녕하세요. 저는 훈이 오빠와 아는 사라입니다. 여기에서 보이는 것은 베트남에서 판매되는 백악기 시대의 초고개입니다. 이것은 백악기 시기의 잠자리 화석으로 변화하지 않고 그대로 유지되고 있습니다. 진화를 하려면 DNA에 있는 정보를 다시 코딩해야 합니다. 감사합니다.